If I was to use the term organised crime to describe what took place at Abu Dhabi 2021, there are many people who could not handle the utilisation of that term. They cannot accept that that is what actually took place. But that is the truth. It was organised crime. It was the systematic contriving of the ending of a sporting event, and that constitutes fraud. It could have only happened if all parties involved were complicit with it. And when I say all parties involved, this includes, but is not limited to, the governing body of the sport, which is the FIA, all competitors in that sport, which is all teams of that sport, who were willing to go along with the rules and regulations of that sport being broken in order to facilitate the ending that the world was shown. The media, the mind conditioning machine that did not inform us about what was going on in the correct manner, instead lying about the rules and regulations of the sport, lying about their purpose, presenting to us that the rules and regulations of that sport were discretionary, could be optionally applied, and the purpose of them was only to get people out of the way anyway, when that is not the truth. They're not optional, and their purpose is to restore sporting fairness, which is the only valid restart condition to resume sporting contest once that sport has had to be suspended to deal with a safety incident. They don't explain it to you like that because then you'd understand it. They don't want you to understand it because by keeping you in the dark, by keeping you disorientated, by hyping it up, by presenting that, oh, this has thrown a spanner in the works now. What's going to happen now? It benefits them, keeps people excited, and that's what they want. It helps them sell their product, but it's not authentic. The governing body, which broke the rules of the sport, then had to rubber stamp that. There's a process whereby you can appeal what took place, and those stewards that are appointed by the governing body, representing the governing body, making decisions on behalf of the governing body in accordance with the rules and regulations of the governing body, they had to assess what took place and determine whether it was in accordance with the rules and regulations, and then determine the validity of the appeal that was presented by Mercedes. They got that wrong. Whose human error was that? Because the media has presented us with the notion that it was the race director that made an error, but it was within his discretion to do that, or it could be interpreted. Nobody knows. There's so much confusion. But ultimately, we got the exciting ending that we all wanted, didn't we? And maybe the right guy won because he absolutely deserved it. So don't you worry, little heads. Move on, everybody. That's what the mind conditioning machine will tell you. The same mind conditioning machine that was telling you before the error that the rules and regulations were optional and that the purpose of those regulations anyway is just to get them out of the way. They're not there to make sure that Lando Norris in seventh isn't now disadvantaged and left a lap behind Pierre Gasly in sixth, when previously he was only 11 seconds behind Gasly. But due to having to intervene in an event to make it safe, it causes this skew of Gasly being able to disappear off around the track, gaining a lap on him, and therefore you have to carry out a mandatory regulation to reset the conditions for everybody to make things fair again before we resume the competition. That is quite simply what the regulation is there for. It's not optional. It hasn't been optional since it was reintroduced in 2012, and yet the media is lying to everybody, pretending that that is a possibility before Michael Massey somehow gets it wrong. Them four stewards that then deal with the appeal, which say that was applied wrongly, and they then decided, oh no, he was within his discretion to apply it that way, because we've invited Red Bull in to ask Red Bull their opinion. That was all corrupt. That was a facade. That wasn't authentic in the slightest. No media has reported on the authenticity of that steward's appeal. So therefore, we've got a supposed judicial process that was just a facade, enabling the corruption that the media has never revealed to be corrupt. Are you seeing how organised this crime actually is? Are you seeing how hidden it is? And the only way that people, and this is a tiny proportion of people, are getting to actually understand the truth about this is by watching tiny channels on social media who don't have a platform to broadcast to people, to tell people exactly what was really going on. Where is the control? Who has the control of the information? Oh, it'd be those that are perpetrating the crimes and getting away with their criminality. So in this video, I'm going to just show you the experience levels of those people who were in charge of dealing with an appeal. The appeal after Abu Dhabi 2021, whereby Mercedes were appealing to the governing body stewards that the race control, the governing body, had not applied the rules of the sport correctly, and therefore that had changed the outcome of the race. So what we know is, and as I've presented 52 occasions where Michael Massey deployed the safety car, at the resumption of racing after that safety car, this is the conditions that were met prior to the resumption of racing. The regulations were carried out each time correctly, okay, and this is what was then produced each time. All of the competitors bunched up, nose to tail, in the correct race order. Because the regulations that he'd applied, which aren't optional, they produced that. At the times where that's not produced, it ended up in a safety car finish. Okay, so what you see there is a line of competitors, the different coloured dots representing the different competitors, in a line, in the correct race order, with all of the previously built up advantages wiped out. But now we go racing again, having reset the conditions for everybody. That's what the regulations. Oh, we've gotten them out of the way of the race between the lead, they tell you. Oh, what jeopardy, they tell you. Quite simple, isn't it? Quite simple. Sport has been being played. Something's happened that's caused a safety concern. We've had to neutralise the sport. And before we commence sport again, we've got to achieve this condition. It's not as exciting when I tell it you that way, is it? It doesn't sell the tickets when I tell it you that way, does it? But it's the truth. It's reality. So, when we come through to Abu Dhabi, the 52nd time that Michael Massey had deployed that safety car when he was race director, and this doesn't include the 15 times that he'd have been Charlie Whiting's apprentice and been party to the deployment of that safety car, or been debriefed about the deployment of that safety car. These were the 52 times Massey deployed the safety car himself. This was the restart condition. Oh, he was confused. He didn't know what that restart condition had to be. Red Bull told him that this was the valid restart condition. The stewards didn't believe that this was an invalid restart condition. So what we have here is not the list of competitors in the correct race order, lined up one behind the other. We have first, second, 12th, 13th, 3rd, 4th, 14th, 5th and 6th. And then, out here at turn 5, we have 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. That is not the correct race order. That is not the reset start condition that must be achieved prior to the resumption of racing. That is not restoring sporting fairness to all of those competitors. There are too many skews there. 3rd, can't challenge 2nd. 5th, has got a car in between them and being able to directly challenge 4th. 7th, can't challenge sixth. The intervention in an event with the safety car to deal with a safety issue cannot result in all of those different skewed outcomes. So, hence we have regulations. They're not optional, they're mandatory. They are for the purpose of restoring sporting fairness. Not just to remove these 5 out of Max Verstappen's way so that Max Verstappen gets a free hit at everything, which is what they told you it's for. Utter lies. Utter lies given to you by the contracted media, the presented experts, and nobody since has revealed that. Instead, they've told you that the governing body has performed a review on this. They've done an investigation. The investigation is utter rubbish. Oh, we've changed one word in those regulations and that's cleared everything up. And every time you saw this procedure carried out before, since 2012 when it was reintroduced, and every time you've seen it carried out since, it's all been the same, apart from Abu Dhabi. But one word's changed something. That's what they've managed to convince everybody. That's what the mind conditioning machine has made the masses believe to be true. This is the danger of media. Media is owned by the billionaires who own the show of Formula One. They're perpetrating a crime. They are perpetrating a fraud. They are profiting from that. And then they are using their mind conditioning machine to lie to people and convince people of their version of the truth so that they're not held to account for their crime. And people are so thick, people fall for that. They also have the law enforcement agencies in their pocket and the criminal justice system in their pocket so that they're not held to account for their crimes. Sadly, this is the dynamics of the world. It is that sad. But this is what it is. If you want to stand for justice, we are fighting a big fight here. It's going to require a lot of people waking up and a lot of people saying enough is enough. We demand change. So hopefully this can go towards being a catalyst for that. If you want to stick with this, this is the evidence against the 4 stewards who corruptly rejected the Mercedes appeal and upheld the result that we were presented with in that race. It was completely invalid for them to uphold what had taken place. The Mercedes appeal itself was an entire facade. Okay, that was just there for show, and I will do videos about that, showing you exactly why that was just a pantomime performance designed again to be something that the media reported on to make us believe that the due process has taken place and that the legal side of things couldn't overturn that, making it legally okay. That is what they wanted us to believe, because that is how they wanted to condition our minds to believe that that was the situation. It is entirely false. They are criminals for doing this. They are committing a fraud in doing this. They are abusing each and every one of us in doing this. It is an abuse of us. It is defrauding us. It is abuse of each and every one of our human rights. Understand that. Now there will be obviously Johnny Wankrag in the comments section that likes Max Verstappen and obviously will like to share their opinion and their expertise with us in the comments section. Come here to try and detract from what it is I'm saying. But the truth is, they don't know. We had somebody present that the UK Serious Fraud Office, who are supposed to be investigating serious fraud, doesn't have the jurisdiction to investigate the British media company Sky Sports F1, who defrauded the British population. They think the UK Serious Fraud Office doesn't have the jurisdiction to investigate them. They don't think that the UK Serious Fraud Office has a jurisdiction to investigate the 7 F1 teams who are based in the UK and were part of defrauding the UK population. That's their level of expertise. That's the level of expertise that they think they're sharing with everybody in the comments section. And no doubt that will impact some of the small minds that will click the thumbs up and believe what it is they have to say. Hopefully, those of you with a bit of intelligence will realise who's telling the truth, who's coming out with the factual information, and why it is I'm actually doing it this way. Okay, so this is a recap of what was taking place. The unlapping procedure, which is there to restore sporting fairness to all competitors, was reintroduced at the beginning of the 2012 season. I haven't changed that slide yet. It's the Australian Grand Prix, not the Austrian Grand Prix. I got that wrong. That was when the unlapping procedure was readopted into the sport. Between Australia 2012 and Abu Dhabi 2021, there was 10 full seasons from the opener of 12 to the finale of 21. Abu Dhabi was the 199th Grand Prix since that unlapping of lapped cars was reintroduced. So in the 10 full season, up to and including Abu Dhabi 2021, there are 199 Grand Prix held under the regulations which mandated the unlapping procedure. It isn't optional. 148 safety car deployments, 49 of which required the unlapping of lapped cars. And those are those procedures listed there. They're the 49 times that required the unlapping of lapped cars. The figure in brackets is the number of laps the safety car stayed out on track after those cars were released. It's a minimum that the safety car remains on track for at least one lap. On many occasions, the safety car remained on track beyond that minimum one lap. Is it remaining on track so that those cars are gotten out of the way of the race between the leaders? Or is it remaining on track until all of those released cars make it around the track to catch the back of that snake to restore the restart condition, to create that valid restart condition? I'm not asking a question. I'm telling you that's what it did. That is its purpose. The media won't tell you that. Strange that, isn't it? I can evidence this. I can go through each and every video. You can do that. That's the truth. If you are able to go and look at this and evidence it and see it with your own eyes, go and check out each of those Grand Prix. See what happens. I'm not lying. The media is lying. So, they're the incidents. This is Michael Massey's. The first time Michael Massey deployed the safety car, okay, it resulted in a safety car finish to that race. The 2019 Bahrain Grand Prix, Gary Connolly was an FIA steward at that event. Tracker view. The location of those cars at the end of that event, as they crossed the start-finish line, was this. They were behind the safety car. Safety car wasn't removed, couldn't be. And we don't have the correct race order. First is Hamilton. Second, on the road, is a white dot of Robert Kubica. It's not first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, in the correct race order with all the previously built up advantages wiped out. They couldn't achieve that condition in time, hence the race ended behind the safety car. This is tracker view. This is what that dynamic looked like. Gary Connolly was a steward at that event. The 33rd time that Michael Massey deployed the safety car was at the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix. This also ended with a safety car finish. This is lap 57 and 57. Gary Connolly, once again, the FIA steward. Tracker view. This time looks like this. So, different track layout by the looks of things, or maybe a reversal of its orientation. In the lead, Hamilton just crossing the start-finish line. Behind Hamilton on track, a red dot. Well, that's not the correct race order because second in that race was Max Verstappen, the blue dot. Out here, we've got yellow dots of Ocon and Ricciardo. So running last, it looks like at the moment, is Esteban Ocon. He's in 9th position. We've got 17 running competitors. That's not the correct race order. They didn't have time to achieve that restart condition, hence the race ended behind the safety car. The race director was aware of that. Gary Connolly was aware of that. The 52nd time that Michael Massey deployed the safety car, they go racing like that. Gary Connolly's the steward. What do you know, Gary Connolly? When it came to the appeal where Mercedes saying the rules and regulations haven't been applied here, Gary Connolly, rather than simply say correct, they've not been applied correctly. Gary Connolly, along with Derek Warwick and Felix Holter, said, let's ask Red Bull what Red Bull think the rules and regulations are. That's not authentic, is it? That's not what the process is. The process is a team is protesting to the stewards of the governing body to protest that the rules and regulations have not been followed. And all them stewards need to do is look at the rules and regulations, look if what took place was in accordance with those rules and regulations, and if it didn't take place in that manner, agree with Mercedes. You're right. That didn't take place. They didn't apply the correct rules and regulations. So therefore, what we have to do is reinstate this to before those rules and regulations were broken. That's their role. That's their job. What did they do? Ask Red Bull what they thought. Invited in Christian Horner, Jonathan Wheatley, and it was Adrian Newey, the genius. That's not authentic. That's a fraud. Nobody explains that to you. That's strange. The mind conditioning machine has never revealed how corrupt that appeal was. So, the 4 stewards, Connolly, Warwick, Holter, and Mohammed Al-Hashmi. Al-Hashmi would have been provided by the Abu Dhabi authorities, so I'm not going to lump him in with the same as the other 3. The other 3, Connolly, Warwick, and Holter, are provided by the FIA, the corrupt governing body that broke the rules with its race control, and its appointed stewards are cementing the rule break. So your fail-safe measure, the thing you have in place to ensure that the right thing is done if, there's some sort of issue, they also get it wrong. They're also guilty of the same human error as Michael Massey, and they follow a corrupt process in making the same error. It's a strange mistake, this one, isn't it? Isn't it a strange mistake? Oh, how many people are in on the mistake, I wonder? Or how many teams protested that the mistake had been made? Because all were affected by it. I mean, 3rd place Ferrari, they were affected by that mistake because their competitor was blocked off from being able to challenge for 2nd position in that race, or even 1st position in that race. They didn't protest the mistake. Yeah, there's a lot of problems. So this is the FIA official document demonstrating that Connolly, Warwick, and Holter were the stewards. This is the profiles of those people that is on the FIA website, or you can find these on the internet. Holter was aware of the unlapping process. He was a steward at the 2018 German Grand Prix. This is confirmation that he was one of the stewards at the 2018 German Grand Prix. At the 2019 Spanish Grand Prix, the safety car was deployed by Michael Massey. There were lapped cars. Michael Massey performed the unlapping procedure as required, but rather than the safety car returning to the pits at the end of the following lap after the release of those lapped cars, Michael Massey kept that safety car on track for a further lap, enabling those released cars to fully catch the back of the pack. Gary Connolly was a steward at that event. He witnessed that. Was that getting them out of the way of the race between the leaders, which is what Martin Brundle and David Croft were paid to tell the world was its purpose, Gary? Was what was happening there, Gary? No, it wasn't, was it, Gary? The regulations were being applied to achieve the mandatory restart condition, weren't they, Gary? You know that. You invited Red Bull into the appeal to present that that wasn't the case, and you sided with what Red Bull said, didn't you, Gary? So that's the confirmation of Gary Connolly being a steward at that event where that took place. That is tracker view on the commencement of that mandatory safety car lap. That is tracker view at the end of that mandatory safety car lap. They didn't go racing then when they could have, in accordance with the regulations. The race director kept the safety car lapping. At the end of the additional lap, that's tracker view. In fact, a few seconds before this, before Hamilton had bolted, because this is what happened, the field bunches, and then the safety car goes into the pits, and the leader chooses the time at which they then hit the accelerator and resume racing again. They can't overtake till they cross the start-finish line, but obviously the field has begun to spread now because the leader has bolted. Hence you see these gaps appearing. But that's what's happening. The correct race order has been restored and all the previously built-up advantages have been wiped out. The purpose of the regulation that they failed to tell you now that they've gotten them out of the way. Derek Warwick was a steward in that appeal. Derek Warwick has a conflict of interest. There is the Red Bull team, which benefited, powered by a Honda powertrain. So isn't it great publicity for a Honda-powered machine to be crowned a world champion of a motorsport? That's great kudos for the Honda brand of car sales. Derek Warwick happens to make a living out of selling Honda cars. He owns a Honda car dealership. So, being in a position where you can judge whether or not Honda are allowed to win a competition based on applying the rules and regulations of that sporting contest, the outcome of which you may benefit from, that's called a conflict of interest. The FIA selected Derek Warwick to be one of its stewards for that event. That is corrupt. Which form of media has ever told you that? Which form of media has even explained the notion of a conflict of interest? None of them. The owned mind conditioning machine only wants to tell us what it wants to tell us. We need to wake up to who is in control of the information that they want us to believe. It is organised crime. You would not believe just how big this actually is. So there's confirmation of Derek Warwick being a steward at the 2020 Eiffel Grand Prix. 2020 Eiffel Grand Prix was another race where Michael Massey, the race director, was race director, and he performed an additional lap of that safety car beyond the mandatory lap. This is tracker view of the Eiffel Grand Prix. Hamilton is the leader. The white dot ahead of Hamilton is Daniel Kvyat, the last lapped car who has just been released, meaning this now commences the mandatory safety car lap. The end of this lap, the safety car can return to the pits and they can resume racing. At the end of this lap, this is the location of the cars. There. Do they begin racing? No. The reason they don't begin racing, there's only 5 cars there. The other cars are still round here. Are they out of the way of the race between the leaders? These are the 5 leaders, aren't they? Are these out of the way? Yes, they are, aren't they? Why are we not gone racing again? Oh, it's because actually 6th place Leclerc, well, he's been disadvantaged. He can't challenge for 5th. You have to wait to restore sporting fairness. Michael Massey knew that. That's why he kept the safety car on track. Michael Massey got confused in Abu Dhabi 2021. That's what they tell us. Derek Warwick is a steward at this event, witnessing this. Derek Warwick has to ask Red Bull what the regulations are there for in Abu Dhabi 2021, even though he's clearly seeing what's taking place here. Who's telling you the truth? Who knows what the purpose is? Who knows the truth? And who is playing their role in the fraud? It's not a question. It's not a question. I'm posing it as a question, but the reality is I know the answer. I know that they're all in on the fraud. So that is at the end of the following lap. So the initial lap, the mandatory lap that those lap cars are afforded, with which to attempt to catch the back of the pack. They were nowhere near, so the race director kept the safety car on track for a further lap, and that's the end of that further lap. All the cars bunched, correct race order, now we go racing again. The restart condition met. Gary Connolly, 2020 Sakhir Grand Prix, another event where the safety car remained on track for 2 laps beyond the lap that they were released on. Gary Connolly. So there's the confirmation of him being a steward at that event. Here's tracker view. What you're seeing is Perez is the leader. Jack Aitken, the blue dot ahead of him, is the last lap car, having just been released prior to the commencement of the lap. So now we're doing the lap behind the safety car, the mandatory one. This is the end of that lap. Perez just about to cross the line. Has the safety car returned to the pits and we go racing again? No. We've got Fittipaldi still here. We've got Jack Aitken over here. Is he out of the way of the race between the leaders? Well, yeah, but he's been left stranded, cast adrift. Did we go racing? No. The following lap, there we are. We're all bunched up. Now we go racing. Michael Massey knew that. Michael Massey enacted that. Gary Connolly was a steward at that event where that took place. At Abu Dhabi, when this didn't take place, we had to invite Red Bull in to ask Red Bull, what is going on here and is this valid? Red Bull tell you that that's allowed to happen. No, it's not. So, profile on Gary Connolly, you can pause and have a read of that if you want to. So these are the events that Gary Connolly I can find on the FIA official documentation about which events he was a steward at and what he would have experienced and what he would have witnessed. Okay. Derek Warwick, there's his profile. They are the events that I can find on official FIA documentation where Derek Warwick was a steward, what he would have experienced, what he would have witnessed. Felix Holter, his profile on the FIA profiling of them. Ones where I can find the events. There are actually more I found of Holter, but that's what I found for this PowerPoint. Events where he was steward, what he would have experienced, what he would have witnessed. Al Hashmi, like I say, he was provided by the Abu Dhabi track, so I'm not going to lump him in with the other 3. 199 Grand Prix since the reintroduction of that mandatory procedure that we are presented with by the so-called experts, the presented experts of the mind conditioning machine, that it's an optional procedure and it's to get people out of the way. That's not what it's for, and it's not optional. And these 3 people, who were all in those positions of team principal, team direct manager, or whatever Wheatley is, and technical director, Nui, they were invited into the appeal where Mercedes appealed to the governing body to say the governing body has broken its rules and therefore we need to reinstate to the position prior to the rules being broken. And those FIA appointed stewards invited these 3 in, who were all party to those 199 races, had never protested the regulations before, had never questioned the purpose of those regulations before, had never questioned the wording of those regulations, but now all of a sudden, at this contrivance, are able to produce the notion that the purpose of the regulations is something entirely different. The way one word within those regulations means that you can interpret them regulations to mean something completely different, which produces a completely different outcome. And those stewards pretend that that's a valid explanation, and it's not the truth. And they present the notion of legal. Oh, legally, you can skew this word around and twist a word around to mean something else, and that's equally valid if you think about it that way. Entirely wrong, because everything in this world is grounded in context. And if you attempt to twist the meaning of a word to apply a different meaning to what is taking place or allowed to take place, and what it produces is invalid, produces a skewed outcome, which is not the intention of what that regulation is there for, then clearly the manner in which you are trying to suggest as being a valid interpretation is a totally invalid interpretation. Again, nobody in the media will explain that to you. They don't want you to be educated. They don't want you to have an understanding. They don't want you to understand it that way. Instead, they want to gaslight you. They want you to remain ignorant. They want you to believe the notion that, oh, well, the thing is with law, only lawyers can understand it. You won't be able to understand it. You have to get somebody that knows, and that's really expensive. And then they argue whether or not something is true or false or right or wrong, and it takes years for them to work out whether it's right or wrong, and it can be argued this and it can be argued that, and depending on whether the judge likes you or whether your lawyer's a good lawyer depends on the outcome. Doesn't that sound like a corrupt process to you? Well, sadly, that's how this facade does actually operate. Again, all part of the working of the corrupt society that we live in. It shouldn't operate like that, but unfortunately, that's what's going on. But it's one of the tools that they use to get away without consequence for their wrongdoing. This notion of legal argument. Oh, we will present it this way to absolve ourselves of consequence for our wrongdoing. And we'll claim that under the law, that would be valid. Legally, we can do that. The law doesn't say that we can't do that. See how they manipulate that to get away with crime. Sadly, that's the way things go. It is corrupt. We all need to understand that. It is sadly corrupt. So, that's them. Okay, all three have been in their roles at Red Bull since well before 2012 when the unwrapping of lap cars was reintroduced into the regulations. Okay, 10 full seasons prior to Abu Dhabi. All three have been party to the 198 Grand Prix contested prior to Abu Dhabi. All three will have observed and understood the 147 safety car deployment restarts or safety car finishes. All three will have witnessed and understood the 49 safety car situations which required the unlapping of lapped cars. And just one of the previous 48 situations which occurred since 2012 where the safety car was deployed was a single lapped car not released, which was Singapore 2017, where Pascal Wehrlein had been lapped by the entire field and became lapped twice again by the leaders during the safety car due to his team pitting in late in the safety car period, making him ineligible to be released. So there's always reasons for things happening, and yet they'll try and gaslight the situation and pretend that this is a construct. Okay, this is a construct, and I can prove the things that they will try to present as to try and form their argument as being entirely false. Anyway, you get Jonathan Wheatley's involvement. Obviously, those lapped cars, you don't need them to let them go right around the track. and let them catch up with the back of the pack. You just need to let them go, and then we've got a motor race on our hands. You just need to let them go, and then we've got a motor race on our hands. You see, that was crafted, okay? He didn't say you just need to let them go and bring the safety car in straight away, because that would have been incriminating. He didn't say that, did he? Oh, that was crafted not to say that, because then he said, oh, I didn't tell him to break the rules. But just letting them go and then we've got a motor race on our hands, does that take into account the mandatory safety car lap? The wording of the regulations being, once the last lapped car has passed the leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. That's the wording of the regulations. Jonathan Wheatley, who has signed documents to say that as the sporting director of Red Bull or wherever he is, as a competitor in this sport, he's going to adhere to the rules and regulations of this sport. Sign up to the FIA International Sporting Code. He's contacting the race director, but this is all part of the facade anyway. This is all part of the pantomime performance. He's saying, you just need to let them go, and then we've got a motor race on our hands. Does that indicate carrying out the regulation in full? Well, it wouldn't suggest so. But he's not directly said you don't have to complete that mandatory lap, has he? So again, they've used their fancy lawyer to word things correctly, to not incriminate themselves, or so they think. They managed to do that very skillfully during that highly pressurized situation in the last 5 laps of Abu Dhabi, where they realised, oh, this break of Nicholas Latifi catching fire is going to prolong this safety car period, and now we're going to have to mash the rules up in order to get some sort of restart. Let's get the regulations out. Let's determine that any doesn't mean all, because legally we're going to argue that, and let's make sure we don't incriminate ourselves when we coerce the race director into following this procedure that we're going to recommend. They did that rather skillfully under pressure, didn't they? Wasn't contrived, was it? Christian Horner. Christian to Michael. Why aren't we getting these lapped cars out of the way? We only need one racing lap. That message was broadcast to the world when those cars were on lap 57. Regulations are not about getting cars out of the way. They are to enable Lando Norris in 7th the opportunity of getting round and being behind Pierre Gasly in 6th, so that when the race resumes, Lando Norris hasn't had his chances of challenging for position obliterated due to another car crashing. That's what it's for. It's not about getting him out of the way. Christian projects it as getting out of the way to divert the audience's attention to believe that, oh, these are just in the way of Max. And we only need one racing lap. We're on lap 57. Once the last lap car has passed the leader, that hadn't taken place on lap 57 when this message was given, safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. Well, the end of the following lap is the end of lap 58. That's a safety car finish. F1 TV chose to play that to us when those cars were on lap 57. We don't know when Christian actually said this. Christian will tell us, oh no, I said this in time. I didn't tell him not to perform the mandatory safety car lap, did I? No, I had my words carefully crafted so that I didn't incriminate myself. But F1 TV played that to the global watching audience at a time where the regulation could not be carried out. Why would you play out somebody suggesting a procedure which is invalid at a point in time where it is destined to be a safety car finish? What is it diverting people's attention to? Can you see how organised this actually is. It's an entire contrivance that they just want to pretend, oh, it's all a muddle. Nobody really, it's all chaotic and nobody knows, nobody understood. The reason that they weren't able to do the unlapping procedure any sooner than lap 57 was this is the end of lap 56. This was the situation on track. When they present, oh, unlapped cars will not be allowed to overtake. And it's not mandatory, which means Max Verstappen is left with a lot of work to do. It doesn't mean that at all. You can't go racing with lapped cars in situ. You can't go racing leaving Lando Norris now a lap behind Pierre Gasly. No, doesn't mean any of that. But again, the mind conditioning machine is disorientating everybody, is lying to people, is pretending that, oh, well, in the chaos, this is how we're going to work through the chaos. Oh, what's happening now? The complete contrivance. This is information about what Red Bull knew about the safety car and how it impacted them and their B teams in 2012, 2013, 2015. You can pause this and have a read of that. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. What Red Bull knew about red flags in 2021. What Red Bull knew about the safety car. Okay, they knew all this. They know what its rules are, the purpose, and how it impacts people. And yet they were enabled to present a different version of that at this invalid steward's appeal that the media doesn't report on. So I then went on to, when I produced this PowerPoint some time ago, I then went on to try and recommend other YouTube channels, FF1 being one of those, Boy10Dio being another. I will also recommend to you NS&C and Espinala 44. You'll see that when I produced this PowerPoint originally, my channel only had 1,190 subscribers. It's now up to 8,300, which is significantly bigger than then, but it's minuscule. My videos are being seen by, at the moment, a couple of hundred people. Whether that is because people aren't interacting with F1 social media because it's a closed season, whether it's the suppression of content, who knows? Ultimately, like we say, information is being controlled. Information is controlled by the owners of media and what agenda they want to put out. And even social media is owned by the same ultimate financial interests. BlackRock, Vanguard, the people that own Liberty Media, who own the show of Formula One, which perpetrated this crime, they also own all of the media companies. They own all of the social media companies as well. So the mystery algorithms that you get on social media that determine who gets to see which posts, well, they can be manipulated so that whatever is produced out there that they don't necessarily want people to see, that information doesn't get seen. But oh, that's down to the mystery algorithm. That's the content creator's fault because they've not managed to tick the boxes of the mystery formula. And that's the reason why people don't get to see what they're saying. Nothing else. Nothing to see here. It's not organised crime. So, I hope this has been informative to some of you. I'm just going to keep making the videos until we make a difference. There is going to be action taken, as I keep promising you. As many of you will realise, the scale of what it is we're up against. And what we're up against, even, is corruption within the system that is going to hold these to account. That's the true nature of this. When the agencies which are tasked to investigate crime fail to do so, and then have to take their investigation and present it in front of the criminal justice system, well, when the agency tasked with investigating that crime refuses to investigate it, What chance are we got? How corrupt is that system? And can we rely on the next step of the situation, the court system, which this was have to be put in front of to deal with this appropriately? How many of that court system have been bought off? Okay, and this is a valid question because, again, if you look at the process of what they go through, the facade of court proceedings and court hearings, and what corrupt lawyers are enabled to do within that system, that they present as being, well, this is the system in which law operates. Well, it's corrupt. It's entirely corrupt, and that's not incriminating to me. Okay, people that work within that system know that it's a facade and know it's corrupt, and I can evidence it is. I can evidence it is. The system knows that, and it doesn't like me for it. But that's something that we need to be able to bypass. Well, not bypass. We need to overcome, and it helps with exposure. It helps by waking people up and demonstrating to people, well, look at what's really going on here. So I hope you can share this with people. I hope that it's giving you greater understanding of what's really going on. And I hope that you can then inform others to make them aware of what's really going on. Because that's what it's going to ultimately take to make changes in this world. Wake people up, educate people as to what's really going on, and understand how organised this criminality actually is. And how badly our lives are tainted by it when this organised criminality isn't being taken down, isn't being challenged, is allowed and able to get away with it by the agencies that are put in place supposedly to ensure that this sort of thing doesn't happen. And if it does happen, punishment's applied. What's going on there? Anyway, thank you for your time.